What if a single sentence could shatter a billion-dollar empire? A 22-year-old waitress, drowning in medical debt, is working a double at the most expensive restaurant in the city. A ruthless billionaire sits at her table, a man who could buy the entire building. As he reaches for his glass, his cuff slides back, revealing a unique tattoo. The waitress freezes. She's seen it every day of her life, on her dying mother. She leans in and says the words that will change everything. "Hi, sir. My mother has a tattoo just like yours." What happened next is a story of stolen identity, devastating secrets, and a 20-year-old lie that is about to come crashing down. The L'Etoile d'Or was not a restaurant. It was a statement. Perched 60 floors above Manhattan, it was a silent, velvet-draped cathedral for the city's financial gods. Its chandeliers didn't just drip crystal, they dripped condescension. And Amelia Evans, Mia to her friends, though she had few, was utterly invisible here. That was the job. Be invisible. Be a pair of hands that refilled water, a quiet voice that recited specials, a shadow that cleared plates. At 22, Mia was fluent in 2 languages, English and the silent, brutal language of debt. The red final notice envelope on her kitchenette counter this morning had screamed louder than any alarm clock. Her mother, Sarah, was coughing again, a dry, papery sound that seemed to pull the very life from her lungs. The experimental treatment wasn't working, and the bill for it was a number so large it looked like a misprint. "Evans, table 4, hissed Mr. Dubois, the maitre d', "and stand up straight. He's here." He was Julian Mercer. Mia had never served him personally, but she knew the legend. Mercer Global, a man who didn't just own skyscrapers. He owned the horizons they sat on. He was rumored to be cold, precise, and utterly ruthless. They said he had once fired an executive for using a split infinitive in a memo. Maya smoothed her black apron, took a deep, steadying breath, and approached the table. He wasn't alone. 2 men in severe suits flanked him, speaking in low, urgent tones about supply chain vulnerabilities. Julian Mercer himself just stared out the window, his profile looking like it had been carved from granite. He looked bored by the billions they were discussing. "Good evening, gentlemen," Mia said, her voice practiced, smooth, and utterly neutral. "May I offer you an aperitif? Perhaps our 1945... "Water," Mercer snapped, not even looking at her. "Still, no ice." "Of course, sir." She moved to pour the water. The bottle was heavy, imported from a Norwegian glacier, and her wrist, sore from a 12-hour shift, ached. As she poured, Mercer finally turned from the window, exasperated by one of his companions. "Robert," he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "If I wanted your opinion, I would have bought it. As it is, your division is underperforming by 9%. Fix it, or I'll find someone who can." He made a sharp, dismissive gesture with his left hand, and that's when it happened. The cuff of his $5,000 bespoke shirt slid back an inch. There, on the pale, veined skin of his inner wrist, was a tattoo. It wasn't a blur of ink. It was a sharp, intricate design. A dark, serpentine M, where the tail of the letter was a snake, coiled and biting its own form. Mia's hand twitched. The heavy bottle clinked against the glass. Mercer's eyes, the color of a winter sky, snapped to her. They were cold, assessing, and full of immediate, lethal annoyance. "Clumsy," he said, the word a simple statement of fact. But Mia didn't hear him. She was staring at the tattoo. She had traced that exact shape just this morning. She had held her mother's frail wrist, dabbing it with a cool cloth, and seen that same mark, that same serpentine M, faded and slightly blurred by time, but unmistakable. Her mother, lost in a fog of pain and medication, had always dismissed it. A mistake, baby, from a life I don't remember. A life she didn't remember. The blood drained from Mia's face. The restaurant, the city, the crushing debt. It all vanished. There was only this man and the impossible, identical Mark. The two executives were staring at her. Mr. Dubois was gliding over, his face a mask of polite fury. Mia was about to be fired. She knew it. She was about to lose the job that was the only flimsy barrier between her mother and total medical destitution. She should have apologized. She should have bowed, scraped, and evaporated. Instead, she looked Julian Mercer directly in the eye. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the expensive hush of the dining room. "Hi, sir," she said, her heart hammering against her ribs. "My mother has a tattoo just like yours." The silence that followed was not silence. It was a vacuum. The executive named Robert froze, his mouth slightly open. Mr. Dubois stopped dead 2 tables away. Julian Mercer did not move. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. The air of bored annoyance was gone, replaced by something primal. It wasn't anger, it was shock, a profound tectonic shift that radiated from him in palpable waves. His eyes bored into hers, no longer cold, but burning. He was seeing her for the first time. Not as a waitress, not as a shadow, but as an existential threat. He slowly, deliberately, pulled his cuff down, hiding the mark. He looked at his security guard, a large man named Thomas, standing by the entrance, and gave a nearly invisible jerk of his head. Thomas was at the table in 3 strides, his hand inside his jacket. "Sir?" Thomas said. Julian Mercer raised a hand. He ignored his guests. He ignored the maître d'. He focused entirely on Mia, who stood frozen, the water bottle still in her hand. "What?" he said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "Is your mother's name?" The private dining room, le salon privé, was soundproof. Mia knew this because Mr. Dubois used to brag that a bomb could go off outside and the diners wouldn't spill their wine. Tonight, the silence was the bomb. Mercer's security guard, Thomas, had guided her there. Guided was a polite word. His hand on her elbow had been a steel clamp. Her manager Dubois had simply stared, his face pale with confusion and fear. Now she sat on a plush damask chair that probably cost more than her car. Julian Mercer sat opposite her, at the long, polished mahogany table. His 2 executives were gone. Thomas stood by the door, arms crossed, a sentinel. "You are pale," Mercer stated. "Drink." He gestured to a glass of water Thomas had poured. Mia ignored it. Her adrenaline had ebbed, leaving a cold, vibrating dread. She had just torpedoed her life. "I asked you a question," Mercer said. He leaned forward. The overhead light carved shadows under his sharp cheekbones. "Your mother's name." "Why?" Mia's voice was stronger than she expected. "It's just a tattoo, right? A coincidence." Mercer's smile was a thin, humorless line. "I do not believe in coincidences, Miss Evans. Amelia Evans. Miss Evans, I am a man who values precision. That mark is not a piece of public flash. It is a private, very private. So I will ask you one last time. Who is your mother?" The desperation that had been her constant companion for an inched back, sharpening her resolve. This man wasn't just curious, he was scared. A man like Julian Mercer didn't get scared. He got dangerous. "Her name is Sarah," Mia said, lifting her chin. "Sarah Evans. She lives in a 1-bedroom in Queens. She's sick, very sick. She's had that tattoo for as long as I can remember. She always said she got it when she was young and stupid." Mercer's eyes searched her face, looking for lies, for traps. Sarah Evans, he repeated. The name seemed to mean nothing to him. And where did she get it? Who gave it to her? She doesn't talk about it, Mia said, the truth ringing clear. She doesn't talk about anything before me. No family, no past. It's like her life started when I was born. Mercer sat back, his fingers steepled. He was processing, the gears of a formidable intellect turning behind his eyes. He was connecting dots she couldn't even see. "This sickness," he said, his voice softening. But it was a calculated softness, a surgeon's move, not a friend's. "What is it?" "The doctors don't know," Mia admitted, hating the wobble in her voice. "It started 5 years ago. Fatigue, memory loss. Now it's attacking her nervous system. They call it a progressive atypical neuropathy. It's fast. And expensive." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Julian Mercer was silent for a full minute. He stared at the polished grain of the table. When he looked up, his expression was shuttered, resolved. The shock was gone. The billionaire was back. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. It was black, bound in fine leather. He signed his name, a sharp, aggressive signature, and tore the check out. He slid it across the table. It was blank. "This is for your trouble, Miss Evans," he said, his voice flat. "For the disturbance. Enough to cover your mother's atypical neuropathy for as long as it takes. Enough for you to never have to work in a place like this again." Mia stared at the check. It was salvation. It was the end of the final notice letters. It was the experimental treatments in Switzerland. It was everything she had prayed for. "And in return?" she whispered. "In return," Mercer said, standing up, "you had a momentary dizzy spell. You spilled some water. I was annoyed. You were fired. But being in a generous mood, I compensated you for your clumsiness. You will never repeat what you said. You will never mention the tattoo. You will forget you ever saw me. You will take this money, and you and your mother will disappear." He was buying her. He was erasing the coincidence. Mia looked at the blank check, a key to the world. Then she looked at Mercer's face, cold and dismissive. He thought he could buy her silence, buy her past. This was the first clue she had ever had to her mother's history. The first hint that Sarah Evans wasn't just a sick, tired woman in Queens, but someone who shared a secret symbol with one of the most powerful men in the world. To take the check was to accept that her mother's past, and by extension her own, was worthless, a commodity to be sold. She put her hand on the check. Her fingers trembled. She could feel the thick, expensive paper. She pushed it back across the table. "No," Mia said. Mercer's eyebrows rose, a fractional, surprised movement. Thomas by the door actually shifted his weight. "I beg your pardon," Mercer said. "I don't want your money," Mia said, standing up. She was terrified, but she was also, for the first time in her life, incandescently angry. "You have that mark. My mother has that mark. She's dying, and you're scared. I don't know what this is, but I'm not for sale." She turned to leave. "You're making a mistake." Mercer's voice cut through the air, stopping her. A profound, life-altering mistake. "You are walking away from an answer to all your problems." Mia turned back. "No, I'm walking toward an answer to all my questions." She expected him to have her thrown out, arrested, or worse. Instead, Julian Mercer stared at her with a strange, new, almost clinical interest. The refusal had been the one move he hadn't anticipated. He pulled a slim, black metal business card from a case. He didn't offer it. He placed it on the table. "Your mother's illness," he said. "You said it's progressive. Time is not on your side. When you change your mind..." And you will change your mind. This is my private number. One call and the offer stands. But the price of my help will be your silence, absolute and eternal." Mia looked at the card, then at him. She grabbed it, turned and walked out of the room, past the steel-eyed guard, and through the hushed, gilded restaurant that no longer employed her. Her heart was a trapped bird, but her spine was a rod of iron. She ran down 60 flights of stairs because she couldn't bear the confines of an elevator, burst out onto the cold city street, and hailed a cab, her hand clutching the black metal card. The cab ride to Queens was a blur of street lights and panic. Mia's mind was a frantic kaleidoscope. The check, the tattoo, the coldness in Mercer's eyes, the fact she was now unemployed. The final notice on her table flashed in her mind. She had just refused a blank check. Was she a hero or a fool? She burst into their small third-floor apartment. It smelled of stale air and rubbing alcohol. "Mum?" Sarah Evans was in her worn armchair, a heavy blanket pooled around her waist despite the mild night. She was staring at a rerun of an old sitcom, but her eyes weren't focused. She was whippet-thin, her skin pale and translucent, and on her wrist, partially hidden by the sleeve of her robe, was the tattoo, the serpentine M. "Mia, baby, you're home early," Sarah murmured, her voice weak. Did the shift? Was it okay? Mia sank to her knees in front of the chair, her hands gripping the armrests. "Mum, I have to ask you something, and I need you to try really hard to focus." "What is it, honey? You're scaring me." Mia took a shaky breath. "The tattoo. You have to tell me where you got it." Sarah's face, usually soft and fogged with illness, tightened. It was the one topic that always brought a flicker of the old, sharp panic. "I told you, Mia, it was a mistake. A long time ago. It doesn't mean anything." "It does," Mia said, her voice shaking. "I saw someone else with it tonight. A man. His name is Julian Mercer." The reaction was instantaneous and violent. Sarah's body jerked as if struck by electricity. Her eyes, previously dull, flew wide open, filled with a pure, primal terror Mia had never seen before. She grabbed Mia's arm, her fingers surprisingly strong. "No!" she gasped, her breath hitching. No, he can't." "How? How did he find us?" "Mum, what are you talking about? Who is he?" "We have to go," Sarah whispered, trying to pull herself out of the chair. Her atrophied legs wouldn't obey. "He found us. He'll put me back. He'll take you." "Put you back where?" "Mum, you're not making sense." "The Institute," Sarah sobbed, fat tears rolling down her cheeks. "He'll say I'm sick again. He'll say I'm crazy. Oh God, Mia, he'll take you away from me." Mia grabbed her mother's shoulders. "No one is taking anyone. I'm here. But you have to tell me the truth. Who is Julian Mercer?" Sarah stared at her daughter, her breathing ragged. The panic was so total it seemed to burn away the fog of her illness. She was seeing the 20-year-old lie she had built to protect them both crumble to dust. "He's my brother," she whispered. The word hung in the air, impossible and absolute. My older brother," Sarah choked out. "My name isn't Sarah Evans, it's Sarah Mercer." Mia felt the floor drop out from beneath her. "Mercer. Like Mercer Global." "There is no Mercer Global," Sarah said, her voice bitter. "There is only Mercer Industries, our father's company. Richard Mercer." She began to talk, the words pouring out in a frantic, disjointed stream, a dam of memory bursting. The tattoo wasn't a mistake. It was the Mercer family crest, a gift given to each heir, Julian and herself, on their 18th birthday. Their father, Richard Mercer, was a tyrant, a cold, brilliant and cruel man who pitted his children against each other. Julian, the elder, was his father's son, cold, calculating, groomed for power. Sarah was the artist, the sensitive one, the disappointment. When our father died, Sarah said, her eyes fixed on a dark corner of the room. It was sudden. A heart attack, they said. Julian was 25, I was 21. The will was read. Father, in his wisdom, had split the controlling shares, 50-50. He wanted us to work together. But Julian wanted it all. What did he do? Mia asked, her blood running cold. He used my grief against me. He used me against me. I was a wreck. I was emotional. He told me I was unstable. He told the board I was unstable. He told me our father's death had broken my mind. He hired doctors. His doctors. She held up her arm, showing the tattoo. He used this. He said this crest, this blood mark, was part of a delusion, that I thought I was the queen of the Mercers. He had me committed. Oh my God, Mum. A private psychiatric facility in upstate New York, Sarah whispered. The Blackwell Institute. It wasn't a hospital, Mia. It was a prison. White walls, padded rooms, drugs. They kept me doped up. They told me I was insane, and after a while, I started to believe them. Julian, with his sister declared mentally incompetent, had filed a motion. A judge, one of his father's old friends, granted him full proxy control over Sarah's shares. He became the sole power. He consolidated, rebranded as Mercer Global, and built his empire on the back of his sister's stolen life. How did you get out? Mia breathed. A man. A kind orderly. Michael. He believed me. He saw what they were doing. He helped me escape. We fell in love. We ran. We changed our names. Sarah Evans. Michael Evans. Mia's blood froze. Michael Evans, my father. Sarah nodded, tears streaming. He was a good man. He saved me. But we were always looking over our shoulder. When you were born, we were so happy. But the fear, it never went away. When you were 3, Michael died. A hit and run. The driver was never found. You think, Julian, Sarah said. The name a curse. He was tying up loose ends. I've been running ever since, hiding. And now my body is just giving up. This sickness, Mia. I don't think it's a sickness. I think it's him. All these years. Finding a way to finish the job. Mia stared at her mother, this stranger who had been hiding in plain sight. The weak, frail woman was gone. In her place was a victim of a monstrous, decades-long betrayal. And Mia was her daughter, the rightful heir to half of the Mercer fortune. He's not going to put you anywhere, Mia said, her voice a low, furious growl. He didn't find us. I found him. She looked at the black metal card in her hand. It wasn't an offer. It was a weapon. He thinks he can buy my silence, Mia said, standing up. He thinks he's in control. She pulled out her phone. What are you doing? Sarah shrieked. Don't call him. He's a monster. You're sick, Mum. You said it yourself. You're being poisoned. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. And I'm not for sale. She dialed the number on the card. It rang once. Mercer, his voice answered, clipped and immediate. Mr. Mercer, this is Amelia Evans, Mia said, her voice shockingly steady. You told me to call when I changed my mind. Well, I've changed my mind, but not about the money. There was silence on the other end. I know who you are, Mia said. I know who my mother is, and I know what you did. You're not buying my silence, Uncle. You're buying her an antidote. Julian Mercer's penthouse was a sterile, glass-walled box that floated above the city. There was no art, only windows. The city itself was his wallpaper. He stood, phone in hand, looking at the pinpricks of light far below. The call had ended seconds ago. The word uncle still hung in the air, a grenade with the pin pulled. Thomas, his head of security, stood by the entrance. "Sir? A problem?" "She knows," Julian said, his voice a flat, dead thing. "She knows her name is Mercer." Thomas's composure didn't crack, but his jaw tightened. "That is suboptimal." "How?" "Sarah, of course. The girl confronted her." Julian ran a hand over his face. He looked, for the first time in his professional life, tired. All these years, all the resources, all the containment, and it's undone by a waitress in a $20,000 a plate restaurant. "What are your orders, sir?" Thomas asked. "We can have them both moved to a secure facility by morning." Quietly. "No," Julian said, turning from the window. "Not yet. The girl, Amelia, she's different. She refused a blank check. She's not motivated by greed. She's motivated by her." He spat the word. "She thinks I'm poisoning Sarah." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Are you, sir?" Julian shot him a look of pure ice. "Don't be a fool, Thomas. Why would I poison a ghost? I've spent 20 years making sure she's comfortable in her obscurity, cared for." This was Julian Mercer's truth. It was the story he had built his empire upon. He wasn't a monster. He was a guardian. He walked to his desk and tapped a biometric sensor. A panel slid open, revealing a private server. He typed a password. A file opened. Project Caduceus. It was the file on Sarah Mercer. He scrolled through decades of surveillance reports, photos of a younger Sarah holding a baby, reports from private investigators tracking her moves from Phoenix to Austin to Queens, medical files, updated monthly by a private nurse, who was, in fact, a Mercer-paid operative, slipping mild, memory-fogging sedatives into Sarah's medication. But the file also contained something else. The reason. He clicked on a scanned document, a psychiatrist's report from the Blackwell Institute, dated 23 years ago. Patient: Sarah Mercer. Diagnosis: paranoid schizophrenia with violent pyromaniacal tendencies. He clicked another file, a grainy, digitized police photo of the Mercer family estate library. It was burned, charred books, a soot-blackened desk, and on the desk, a spilled bottle of brandy and an overturned glass next to the body of Richard Mercer. "She's dangerously unstable," Julian said, as if convincing himself all over again. "She murdered our father. She set fire to the library to cover her tracks. She thought he was the serpent from the crest, come to poison her." "I know the story, sir," Thomas said. "Do you?" Julian snapped. "You know the report. I lived it. I was the one who found her in the garden, singing to herself, her hands black with soot, the whole wing ablaze. I was the one who had to clean it up. I had to protect the family name. I had to protect her from herself." He truly believed it. Every word. His betrayal was, in his mind, an act of brutal, necessary mercy. He had saved the Mercer name from the stain of a patricidal, insane heiress. He had built his empire to protect the legacy his sister would have destroyed. And now, this girl, this niece, was threatening to pull the plug on it all. "She called me uncle," he mused. "She's claiming a relationship. This complicates things. She's not just a variable, she's blood. Sir, she accused you of poisoning. She's not looking for a family reunion. She's looking for a fight." "I know," Julian said. "And she's using her mother's health as leverage. It's a smart move, a desperate move. She thinks I'm a killer. It gives her a strange kind of power." He picked up his phone. "She wants to meet. She thinks she's setting a trap. Fine, we'll spring it for her." He dialed. "Get Dr. Harding on the line. I want a full toxicology kit and a mobile medical team ready. We're going to see my sister." He hung up and looked at Thomas. The girl, Amelia. She's clever. She's also naive. She thinks this is a drama. She doesn't realize it's a war. What's the play, sir? We give her what she wants. We go to the apartment. We examine Sarah. We find no poison. We prove to the girl that her mother is, as I've always known, simply unwell. That her paranoia is a symptom of her disease, not a reaction to a threat. And if she doesn't believe you, then, Julian Mercer said, his eyes turning to ice, we escalate. I will not have my father's legacy, my entire life's work, destroyed by a delusional woman and her misinformed, sentimental child. He straightened his tie. Tell the car to be ready. I'm going to Queens. It's time for a family reunion. The two black SUVs that glided onto Mia's street in Queens were so out of place they looked like alien spacecraft. Neighbors peeked through their curtains. The air crackled. Mia met them at the curb. She had sent her mother a text. Stay in the apartment. Lock the door. Don't open it until I say. Julian Mercer emerged from the lead vehicle. He wasn't in his bespoke suit. He was in dark trousers and a sharp black quarter zip. He looked more like a special operator than a CEO. Thomas was at his side, as was a man in a crisp suit, carrying a metal briefcase. Amelia, Mercer said. It wasn't a greeting. Julian, Mia retorted. The lack of Mr. or Uncle was deliberate. This is Dr. Harding, my personal physician, Mercer said. He's here to honor your request, to test your theory. Where is she? You're not bringing him in, Mia said, blocking the building's entrance. I'm not stupid. I'm not letting your doctor near her. Then why am I here? Julian asked, his patience visibly thin. Because you and I are going to talk. Alone. My mother is safe, and she's not part of this until I have answers. Julian studied her. He had expected hysterics. He was met with cold, calculated anger. He was, perversely, impressed. Fine, he said. He gestured to Thomas and the doctor. Wait. He followed Mia up the 3 flights of rickety stairs. The smell of boiled cabbage and dust in the hallway was a stark contrast to his glass penthouse. Mia unlocked her apartment. It was small, clean, but cramped with medical equipment, an oxygen tank, a walker. Sarah was not there. Where is she? Julian demanded, his voice dropping. She's safe, Mia said. She's at a neighbor's. Now talk. There's nothing to talk about, Julian said, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the poverty, the final notice bill on the counter. He felt a pang, not of guilt, but of annoyance. This was all so unnecessary. My mother told me her name is Sarah Mercer, Mia said, standing in the middle of the room, her arms crossed. She told me you're her brother. She told me you put her in an asylum to steal her inheritance. Your mother, Julian said, his voice laced with a cold, sharp pity, is a very, very sick woman. Her name is Sarah Mercer. I am her brother. And I did put her in an institution, not to steal her shares, which are, by the way, held in a trust in her name, but to save her life, and the family's. Save her life? She said you framed her. Framed her for what? Julian laughed, a short, barking sound. For murdering our father, for burning down the west wing of our home? I didn't frame her, Amelia. I found her. I found her dancing on the lawn while it burned, claiming she had banished the serpent. I protected her. I've been protecting her for 23 years. Mia's blood ran cold. This was a completely different story. It was just as plausible. Her mother was sick. Her memory was faulty. Could her entire story of betrayal be a paranoid delusion? No, Mia said, shaking her head. I don't believe you. She's not violent. She's gentle. The illness took that from her, Julian said. Or perhaps it gives her moments of lucidity. It doesn't matter. I have the reports. I have the police files. I have the doctor's signatures. The Blackwell Institute, Mia said, grasping at the name. She said it was a prison. It was the best private facility in the country, Julian countered immediately. Run by our family's oldest friend and executor, Arthur Blackwell. He oversaw her care personally. The name dropped into the room. Arthur Blackwell. Arthur Blackwell, Mia repeated. The family lawyer? He was more than that, Julian said. He was my father's confidant. He practically raised us after our mother died. He was the one who signed the committal papers with me. He loved Sarah like a daughter. And where is he now? He's retired. He sits on my board, of course. An honorary position. He manages the family estate and Sarah's trust. Something clicked in Mia's mind, a detail, a loose thread. My mother said an orderly helped her escape, Mia said, watching Julian's face. His name was Michael. Michael Evans. My father. Julian frowned. No, that's impossible. An orderly did die the night she escaped. He was caught in the fire she set as a diversion. But his name wasn't Michael. It was David. David Prescott. I saw the casualty report myself. The certainty in his voice was absolute, but Mia's mother had been just as certain. One of them was lying, or one of them had been lied to. She said the sickness isn't natural, Mia pressed, her mind racing. She's been paranoid for years that she's being poisoned. A classic symptom of her psychosis, Julian said, his voice full of frustrated finality. She thinks she's being poisoned. She thinks I'm a monster. She's unwell, Amelia. I came here to prove it to you. Let my doctor take a blood sample. And if you're wrong, Mia challenged. If you're the one who's been lied to. You said this man, Arthur Blackwell, managed everything. He managed the institute. He managed her trust. He identified the dead orderly. He was the witness to her madness with you. Julian stared at her. The implication was monstrous. That Arthur, kind, grandfatherly Arthur Blackwell, the man who had taught him to sail. That's absurd, Julian said, but a sliver of doubt, thin and sharp as a razor, had entered his mind. Arthur had no motive. Didn't he? Mia shot back. He manages her trust. What happens to the trust if she dies? It reverts to me, to the primary line. No, Mia said. It reverts to her line, to me. But if she's declared incompetent and has no heir, or if her heir is unknown, who controls it then? The executor? Arthur? Julian's face was a mask of stone. You are spinning fantasies. Am I? Mia's eyes darted around the room, landing on her mother's pill bottles on the counter. You brought a doctor. You brought a testing kit. You wanted to test her for poisons to prove me wrong. Fine. Test these. She swept the array of bottles into a plastic bag. Test her medication. Julian looked at the bag, then at Mia. The girl's eyes were blazing with a terrible, desperate logic. He had come here to shut her down, to prove her mother's insanity, but her questions had pointed at the one man he had never, ever questioned. Thomas, Julian said, tapping the earpiece he wore. Get Blackwell's file, the original estate file, unseal it, and have Dr. Harding come up. He's not testing my sister. He's testing her medicine. The script had been flipped. The trap Mia had set hadn't caught Julian. It had caught them both. The next 48 hours were a blur of cold, terrifying efficiency. Julian Mercer moved Mia and Sarah into a secure location. It wasn't a penthouse. It was a private, fortified medical wing in a building Mercer owned, staffed by doctors and nurses who answered only to him. Sarah was terrified, but Mia held her hand. It's okay, Mum. We're not his prisoners. We're his partners. Trust me. Julian, meanwhile, had gone to war. The first results came back from Dr. Harding. The pills from Sarah's apartment. "It's not a poison, not in the traditional sense," Dr. Harding explained, his face grim, on a secure video call with Julian and Mia. "It's a complex cocktail, a beta blocker to induce fatigue, a low-dose benzodiazepine to create memory fog, and this," he pointed to a chemical chain, "it's a custom-synthesized neuroagent, cumulative, not designed to kill, but to mimic the symptoms of progressive neuropathy. It's designed to make her look and feel exactly as she's been diagnosed. Sick, confused, paranoid. It's diabolical." Mia felt sick. For 20 years, her mother hadn't been ill. She had been managed. Julian's face was white. "By who?" "The prescriptions are filed by a Dr. Aris Thorne," Harding said. "But the pharmacy is a shell. It's a mail-order service based in Delaware." "Track it," Julian ordered. Simultaneously, Julian's own financial forensics team was tearing apart Arthur Blackwell's life's work. They were deep diving into the Sarah Mercer Trust. "It's a masterpiece, sir," the head analyst reported, his voice tinged with horrified admiration. "The trust itself is clean. But the fees? Blackwell has been paying himself an executor's fee of 5% annually, which is high but not illegal. But he's also been billing the trust for specialized care. The Blackwell Institute, which he privately owned, billed her trust $2 million a year for her care while she was there. And after she escaped, he's been billing it for private investigation and remote medical monitoring services. Guess who owns the PI firm and the mail-order pharmacy in Delaware?" "Arthur," Julian said, his voice dead. "To the tune of about $4 million a year. For 23 years. He's siphoned off nearly $100 million, all while protecting her assets." The motive was no longer in question. The final piece came from Thomas, who had, per Julian's orders, used a Black Ops team to acquire the original files from the Blackwell Institute, which had conveniently burned down a decade ago. But Arthur, the meticulous lawyer, had kept private copies. Thomas laid them on a table in front of Julian and Mia. There it was, the casualty report for the night of Sarah's escape. Orderly, David Prescott. Deceased. "We ran the name," Thomas said. David Prescott was a real person. He was a 60-year-old orderly. But he didn't die in the fire. He retired to Florida 2 days later with a 7-figure bank deposit. He died of a heart attack in Miami 6 months after that. "So who was Michael Evans?" Mia asked, her heart pounding. Thomas slid another file over. "Michael Evans, an orderly, age 24. He was not on the books. He was a ghost. We think he was a plant, hired by Blackwell. But something went wrong." "What went wrong?" Julian asked. "We think," Thomas said, "that he was hired to help her escape. Think about it, sir. As long as Sarah was missing, Blackwell could hunt for her. He could protect her. He could bleed the trust dry. If she was in the asylum, she was contained, but she was an overhead cost. If she was out, she was a profit center." Mia's mind was spinning. "But Michael, my father, he loved her. He protected her. He died." "That's what went wrong," Julian said, the pieces clicking into place with sickening precision. "Blackwell hired a mercenary. The mercenary, Michael, developed a conscience. He didn't just help her escape. He rescued her. He fell in love with her. He hid her for real, where even Blackwell couldn't find her. He went off script. And the hit and run," Mia whispered. "Wasn't me," Julian said, his eyes locking with hers. "It was Arthur, tying up a loose end. Again. He finally found his profit center again, and her protector. Julian stood up and walked to the window. His entire life, his entire identity as the protector of his family, was a lie. He hadn't been protecting his father's legacy. He had been a pawn in a 20-year-long embezzlement scheme. His sister wasn't a monster. She was the victim. His old friend, Arthur. Arthur was the serpent. "He poisoned my father," Julian said quietly. Mia looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because the story he told me, it was too perfect. Sarah, mad and grieving, kills our father. But the will, our father's will, splitting the shares 50-50, it enraged me. It hamstrung me. But what if—" He looked at Mia. "What if that wasn't the original will? What if Arthur, as the executor, showed us that will, but it was a forgery? A forgery to do what?" "To set us against each other," Julian said. "To make me hate my father's memory and resent Sarah. The man was a monster, but he was a pragmatist. He would never have split the shares. He would have given them to me, the son. What if the real will gave everything to me, but a massive, one-time settlement to Sarah? Mia saw it. A settlement Arthur couldn't control. A trust built on her insanity was the only way for him to get his hands on the money. "He poisoned my father," Julian repeated, his voice now a low, lethal growl. "He framed my sister, and he used me as his guard dog." He turned, his face a mask of cold fury. "He's at the old estate," he said. "He's been overseeing its restoration. Thomas, get the team." "Sir." "This isn't a lawsuit, Thomas. This is an extraction. He's not just a thief. He's a murderer, and he's been poisoning my sister. My guess is, he knows we're on to him. The pharmacy shell went dark an hour ago." Julian's phone rang. It was the nurse from Sarah's room. "Mr. Mercer, I'm sorry. Mrs. Mercer. She's gone." "What?" Mia screamed. "A man came," the nurse said, her voice shaking. "He had credentials. Said he was Dr. Aris Thorne. He said he was transferring her to the ICU. He took her." Julian looked at Mia, his face carved from ice. "It wasn't a doctor," he said. "It was Arthur. He's not running. He's taken a hostage." The Mercer estate, a Gothic monstrosity of grey stone and black slate roofs, brooding over the Hudson River. It hadn't been lived in for 23 years. It was a monument to a lie. 2 black helicopters, blades beating the air with military precision, landed on the overgrown, dead lawn. Julian, Mia, and Thomas's 6-man security team deployed, moving like shadows toward the house. "He's in the library," Thomas said, looking at a thermal feed on a tablet. 2 heat signatures. He's got her. "The West Wing," Julian said, his voice tight. "The one that burned." They entered through the kitchens. The air was cold, smelling of dust and marble. They moved silently, a ghost squad in a ghost house. As they approached the library, they could hear voices. Mia and Julian flanked the door, guns drawn. Julian was armed, but Mia had refused a weapon. She was here for her mother, not for blood. "It was all so easy, Sarah," came Arthur Blackwell's voice. He sounded calm, almost jovial. He was an old man, silver-haired, with a kind, grandfatherly face. He was holding Sarah, who was slumped in a wheelchair, a syringe in his hand. "Julian, he was so eager to believe you were insane," Arthur chuckled. His father had just humiliated him from beyond the grave, splitting the company. All Julian needed was a little push, a little confirmation that you, his rival, were unstable. You killed him," Sarah whispered, her voice weak but clear. The antidote Dr. Harding had administered was working, clearing the fog. "Richard?" "Of course I did," Arthur said, tidying a few books on a shelf as he spoke. "He was a brute, and he overlooked me. Always. I loved your mother, you know, Eleanor, and he destroyed her with his demands, his coldness. She died bearing you. I saw you both as a cancer, but Julian, he was useful, so arrogant. The fire, Sarah murmured. I remember a fire. Oh, you did set the fire, Arthur laughed. That was the beautiful part, my masterstroke. I had just poisoned your father's brandy. You came in, you found him, you saw the glass, you saw the fake, suicidal note I'd planted in your room. You knew what I'd done. You panicked. You tried to burn the evidence. You set fire to the library, to your father's desk, to the note. You were trying to cleanse the sin, you see. By the time Julian arrived, all I had to do was point and say, "Look, she's mad. She's killed him and set the house ablaze. You even had the soot on your hands. It was perfect." And Michael, Mia's voice cut through the room. She stepped out from the shadows. Julian and his team remained hidden. Arthur Blackwell froze. He looked at Mia. Ah, the offspring, the loose end. Michael. Yes. He was a problem, a greedy little thug who grew a heart. The hit and run was messy, but effective. Just as this will be. He raised the syringe, filled with a clear liquid. A simple potassium chloride injection. Her weak heart will just stop. Given her illness, no one will question it. A tragedy. Julian will be so sad. He already is, Julian said, stepping into the room, his gun leveled at Arthur's chest. Thomas and his team fanned out, red laser sights painting Arthur's body. Arthur Blackwell looked at Julian. He didn't look scared. He looked disappointed. "Julian," he sighed, "you were always my greatest creation. A king, and you let a waitress undo you? After all I gave you? You gave me nothing," Julian spat. "You stole my sister. You stole my company. You murdered my father." "I liberated you," Arthur roared, his kind face vanishing, replaced by a mask of pure venom. "I gave you the empire you deserved. All it cost was a dead tyrant and a crazy girl." He grabbed Sarah, pulling her from the chair to use as a shield, the needle pressed to her neck. "Now, back away, all of you, or I'll kill her right here, and you can explain to the world how the long-lost, insane Mercer heiress reappeared just long enough to be murdered by her own rescuers." Mia's eyes were on her mother. Sarah looked terrified, but also angry. "He's lying, Julian," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "He's always lying." "Shut up, Sarah," Arthur hissed. "No," Sarah said. She looked at Julian. "He didn't just kill father. He poisoned mother. Slowly, for years, because she wouldn't leave father for him." Arthur's composure finally broke. The syringe wavered. You knew that?" "I was a child," Sarah said. "But I saw. I saw you in her tea. I saw you in her vitamins. I never understood. Until now." In that moment of shocked hesitation, Mia moved. She didn't attack Arthur. She grabbed the wheelchair and kicked it hard into the back of Arthur's legs. Arthur buckled. His grip on Sarah loosened. Julian shouted, "Thomas, now!" But Arthur was fast. He shoved Sarah away and lunged, not for Julian, but for Mia. He pulled a small derringer from his ankle holster. "The girl! She's the one who—" He aimed at Mia. A shot rang out. Arthur stumbled back, looking down at the red, spreading stain on his crisp, white shirt. Julian Mercer stood, his gun smoking, his face a mask of cold, precise judgment. Arthur Blackwell, the man who had orchestrated their lives, crumpled to the floor of the library, dead. There was a moment of total silence. The dust motes danced in the air. Mia rushed to her mother, holding her as Sarah sobbed, the trauma of 23 years pouring out. Julian Mercer did not move. He just stared at the body of the man who had been his mentor, his father figure, and his ultimate betrayer. He lowered his gun. He looked at his sister and his niece, the ruins of his family, standing in the ruins of their home. "Thomas," Julian said, his voice hoarse, "clean this up." The aftermath was not a news story. It was a transaction. There was no public trial. Arthur Blackwell was discovered dead in his home, an apparent suicide. The reports of his decades-long embezzlement were buried under so many layers of corporate legal armor that they would never see the light of day. Dr. Aris Thorne vanished. David Prescott's body was lost in a paperwork shuffle in Florida. Michael Evans's death was reinvestigated, but the case remained, officially, cold. Julian Mercer, in his own cold, precise way, had erased the stain, not to protect his legacy this time, but to protect his sisters. Sarah Mercer didn't want a trial. She didn't want justice. She just wanted peace. 6 months later, Sarah sat in the conservatory of a new home. Not a Gothic mansion, but a light-filled house on the coast of Maine. The toxins were gone, but the years of physical and psychological damage had taken their toll. She was still frail, but her eyes were clear. She was painting, a bright, abstract canvas of blues and yellows. Mia sat with her, reading a book. The quiet was comfortable. The sound of a car on the gravel announced his arrival. Julian. He visited every Sunday. He came in, not with the arrogance of a billionaire, but with the awkward stiffness of a man learning a new language. The language of family. "Julian," Sarah said, smiling. She had, to Mia's astonishment, forgiven him. "You were a victim too, brother," she had said. "He weaponized your strength, just as he weaponized my weakness." "Sarah." "Amelia," he said, nodding. He handed Mia a thick folder. "The paperwork is finalized." Mia opened it. The Michael Evans Foundation for Patient Advocacy. After the dust had settled, Julian had made his offer. "Half of it is yours, Sarah." "By right." Sarah had refused. "I don't want the company. I don't want the money. I just want this." She had gestured to the quiet, but Mia had negotiated. She hadn't taken a payout. She hadn't taken a job. She had taken a mission. Julian, using his own funds and the recovered $100 million from Blackwell's estate, had endowed a new, independent, charitable foundation. Mia was its head. Its purpose: to fight for patients in psychiatric care, to investigate medical malfeasance, and to give a voice to those, like her mother, who had been declared crazy when they were simply telling the truth. "The first case starts tomorrow," Mia said, her voice full of a steel that mirrored her uncle's. "A private facility in Ohio. The reports look familiar." "Good," Julian said. "Burn them to the ground." He looked at his sister. She was dabbing at her painting. He glanced at her wrist, then at his own. The serpentine M was still there, a permanent mark of a past built on lies. "I've been thinking about this," Julian said, touching the tattoo. "Our father told me it meant Mercer strength, that we were descended from vipers and phoenixes, that we always survive." "He was a poet," Sarah said dryly, not looking up. "And a liar." "I was thinking of having it removed," Julian said. "No," Mia said, surprising them both. She looked at her mother's wrist, then at Julian's. "You can't. It's not a brand. It's a scar. It's our history. It's what brought us together." Julian looked at his niece. She had his strategic mind, his precision, but she had her mother's heart, and, he realized, her father's courage. "The inheritance," Julian said quietly. "It wasn't the money, or the company." "What was it then?" Mia asked. Julian Mercer looked at the woman he had abandoned and the woman who had saved him. Us, he said. We're the Mercer inheritance, the ones who survived. He sat down for the first time, not as a king or a guardian or a victim, but as a brother. And they sat together, a broken, healing family in the afternoon sun. A 20-year lie, a $100 million betrayal, and a family shattered by a single, ruthless man. It all came undone because one waitress was brave enough to speak 5 simple words. Mia didn't just get an answer to her question. She reclaimed her mother's life, uncovered her father's sacrifice, and forged a new future from the wreckage of the past. The Mercer tattoo, once a symbol of a terrible secret, became the one thing that bound them together. What do you think of Mia's decision? Did Julian Mercer deserve to be forgiven? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This story shows that sometimes the truth is more dramatic and more dangerous than any lie. If you were on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button, share this story with someone who loves a good twist, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more incredible real-life dramas just like this one. We have new stories every week, and you don't want to miss what happens next.